you mentioned this. What is the dragon's teeth?
Dragon's teeth are concrete obstacles, basically concrete blocks that are placed in the ground. They're heavy. They're spaced so that tanks can't just come barreling through. They will have to be removed before a tank comes in. And so the idea is that you would have to come in, pause, stop. Artillery can come and hit you. The dragon's teeth is part of an obstacle belt that's usually combined dragon's teeth with a large anti-tank ditch that's then will basically be protected by minefields. So you're going to come to the dragon's teeth, you're going to hit a minefield, you're going to stop, then you have to reduce the dragon's teeth, you're going to hit with artillery. Even once that's done, you got to come through the anti-tank ditch into more minefields. So it's part of a major obstacle belt. And it defines the first line of defense of the Russian defensive system network that's been put in place in Zaporizhia and elsewhere. And the Ukrainians are bragging that they've actually reached the dragon's teeth. And there's some evidence that they have at least gotten within visual. They can see the dragon's teeth. They may have put reconnaissance units, dismounted reconnaissance units across the dragon's teeth to take selfies, and then people will geolocate that and say, see, the Ukrainians are here. But they're not. There's no tanks that have gotten through the dragon's teeth. They haven't penetrated the dragon's teeth. It's still the first line of defense hasn't been trained. But here's the thing. It's meant to be broken. That's what people don't understand. The first line of defense is designed to shape, influence the battlefield. You see, by having the dragon's teeth, what you do is you force the Ukrainians, they're going to have to pick a point in that obstacle belt that they're going to focus military resources so that they can reduce that, breach that. But now you have a single place. It's not like you can't go everywhere. You have to bring everybody to this breach, and you have to expand that breach. While you're doing that, you're getting the dog poop, excuse my language, pounded out of you by artillery, air power, etc. You're taking casualties. And the other thing is it's funneling your advance in a direction. So the Russians use the forward defensive zone, which is where Robotyno, the village of Robotyno is, and others, to break up your attack and then to influence your attack by denying you opportunities to go in a certain direction and encouraging you to go in other directions. And the way you encourage is you hold fast here, but you yield here. And so the Ukrainians come in and, let's turn a little bit to the right. We'll head up to Vorobynyo and towards the dragon's teeth. And if they get to the dragon's teeth, they're like, we scored a great victory. No, you literally did exactly what Russia wants you to do. The first line of defense is meant to be breached. It's supposed to incur a significant loss on the enemy, but it's meant to be breached, and then the Russians fall back to a prepared second line of defense, and the Ukrainians now have to do it all again. Knowing if you're coming to the first line of defense, you can approach on a broad front. But then as you breach the first line of defense, you have to funnel through, then approach the second line of defense, lacking all of the resources that you had for that initial attack. As you narrow your advance and push in, the firepower, the artillery that you're using to support your advance can't reach you, because as they come close, remember the Russians are still on the left and right flanks, they now can reach that artillery and blast it. So you're actually becoming weaker and weaker and weaker the more you advance in, which is to the Russian advantage. And then they will time a counterattack to pinch you off and kill everybody. So that's the dragon's teeth. That's the relative importance of it. It's in many ways symbolic of Russian defense. The Ukrainians want to turn it into a symbol of Ukrainian offensive prowess. But again, the dragon's teeth, the first line of defense, was designed by Russia to be reached by the Ukrainians sometime in the first couple weeks of their offensive. We're into month 4, and they still haven't breached it.
So let me ask you here this. To be honest, I look at this whole situation, Scott, not being an expert like you are, but understanding that they are running out of people, they are running out of units, The equipment they are getting is getting destroyed from the West. It's getting destroyed very quickly. They're getting a lot of outdated old equipment. Russia is getting better and better in through this whole process of this conflict, learning how to deal with some new challenges, with those those equipments they were not familiar with. So I see almost like two scenarios, or maybe continuing of one. They are going to put more troops from different countries into it to continue with this, which is pretty much sending people to die. That's it, sending people to die. Or they're going to release something that I've mentioned in one of my latest videos, and I think you might have quite a lot of knowledge or you know, awareness about it, understanding the biological weapons, Scott. I feel that the biggest threat, as people focus, and you are the one who knows about nuclear stuff like no other, okay? But I think the biggest threat now is the biological weapon. Even Medvedev was talking about it recently, and I know Russia is very aware of it. And those laboratories, I know it's a trigger for this platform we are on, but however, I'm taking leap of faith expressing this. This is very serious thing for humanity, for everyone. What are your thoughts on this? Yeah, I just say that. What are your thoughts on this, on the bioweapon to be used next?
I mean, first of all, we can't be dismissive of the possibility of biological warfare being used in this front, just simply because the United States has yet to answer fully and to satisfaction what they were doing in Ukraine with their biological programs. You know, they claim it was defensive orientation. The Russians have put forward documents which show that there's a distinct offensive character to this. Much of what the U.S. did was in violation, if it's true, violation of the Biological Toxin Weapons Convention. So you can't be dismissive, but I will just say this. We signed treaties, and I know people go, oh, you're so naive. I'm a commissioned officer, was a commissioned officer. I took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. And I can tell you that every officer that I served with took that oath seriously. And a key aspect of this oath is that you do not obey unlawful orders. It would be, there's not a single military officer out there right now that would tell you that employing biological weapons would be a lawful order. Be the most illegal thing they've ever been asked to do in their career. And none of them will obey it. None of them will obey it because it's unlawful. You'll say, we don't have authority to have this. We've signed treaties that have banned this. This is not defensive in nature. This is offensive in nature. This is an illegal order that makes me a war criminal. Therefore, I refuse to obey this order. There's no general that would issue that order. There's not a single person in the administration that would put their name to it because it would classify them as a war criminal. No ifs, ands, or buts. So I understand people's concerns about this, but and again, people can say, well, Scott, you're just naive. You're old school. You're cut from an old piece of cloth that no longer applies to this day and age. And that may be the case, but I firmly believe in the fidelity and the integrity of the current officer class in the United States military. And I also believe in the same for many, not all, but many of the government officials that are in power. And I believe that none of them would execute such an order. You know, even if we did have a program in place that produced and weaponized this, again, I have to tell you that the people in those laboratories, if you're given the orders to weaponize this, they would be committing crimes. And there's not too many people who, you know, when you join government service, most people don't join government service because they're, you know, I'm here to implement the, you know, world order and all that stuff. You join because it's a job. You might have some patriotism attached to you, but that patriotism is, you know, red, white, and blue, wave the flag, support the Constitution kind of thing. So these are normal human beings that are doing some sensitive work, but they are going to react as a normal human being would be if somebody said, Remember all that stuff we said we can't do? You signed, you said you're not going to do. We're going to do it now. Most of them would say, we can't. That's illegal. I'm not going to break the law. I have a family. I don't want to go to jail. I don't want any of this stuff to happen. And I firmly believe that there's enough of that in the United States that that kind of order would never be executed by the United States. The United States would not stand by idly while NATO ally sought to implement it in our stead, meaning, let's say, Poland stepped up. I just don't see Poland doing that, because it forever condemns you. You become forever tainted. And I don't think the Polish government's in the business of being forever tainted. You know who is in the business of being forever tainted? The Ukrainian government. They're willing to do just about anything to stay alive. But how are they going to get a biological weapons program, no strings attached? We may see acts of desperation by the Ukrainians, but again, biological weapons programs also are very, very difficult to weaponize. You might be able to, throw a little bit here, a little bit there, and some people get sick. But the thing about it is, as a weapon, what you don't want is an outbreak of something that can be contained, and then antibiotics brought in, and you solve the problem. As a weapon, you want it to be broad based. You want it to impact everybody at the same time, have an impact. And to do that with biological weapons is very, very difficult. Very few nations have been able to do that. There was a Japanese terrorist group, Shinroku or something like that, that tried weaponizing the anthrax and botulinum toxin, and they were unsuccessful in both times, because it's hard to do. It's really, really hard to do. And so I'm not. I mean, again, I said we have to keep an open mind. We have to be, cognizant of the fact that there are biological labs, and there were biological labs in Ukraine, whose purpose seems to be nefarious, and there's not been adequate answers provided. So you have to remember that. But you also have to keep in mind that the people that would have to implement this would require a level of criminality that doesn't exist in mainstream America, especially amongst the ranks of commissioned officers. We're not in the business of committing war crimes. That's not what we do. And every officer I've ever met, past, present, future, would not obey such an order.
It amazes me, and actually it's good that you're so optimistic about it, because I really believe they don't care, and they would be able to go this far, and what could save